Hey everyone, welcome back to another live chat. My name's Scott Wilkinson. I'm a professional piercer, and I've been doing this a long time. So what we do is we take questions here and we answer them to the best of your ability. And everyone also say hi to Jared over here.
Hey everybody, we're glad that you could make it in to enjoy this time with us, where we have Scott answer all our piercing questions and help us guide through these problems. So up first, Little Miss Beats was here. Probably had to go to bed, but we were glad you could stop in for a quick minute.
Thanks for being here.
And Apollo Bela. Emily Sakuma has a question. Hi, Scott and Jared. If someone has a thick enough upper lip, is an Ashley piercing possible? So is there too thick? Is there a point where we can't do it? Or
did they say thick enough upper lip or lower lip?
We said upper lip.
Okay. Now, Ashley is generally through the bottom lip, through the thick part. You might be talking about a Medusa or Philtrum where it goes through the upper part. Either way, yes, it's not like you have too thick of a lip to pierce. You need to have the long enough bar to get it done. Here, where I work at Piercing Vegas, we have many different length bars. Sometimes a normal librette where they're attached on the one side where the flat disc and then the post sticks out. Sometimes they don't make those in full length, so sometimes you need to add a disc to a regular barbell. But coming back around, yes, it is possible.
So just some shops might not carry a long enough one. So that's why you might hear someone say, oh, correct, I can't do it. And they would probably mean a limitation of what they have available.
Correct. So if they say they can't do it, don't let them do it, because that means they have too short of a bar and it's going to get sucked into your lip. You need to have someone who has the right length of bar, and it's going to swell. So you have to have a little bit extra room. So I go out of my way to make sure I have those extra length bars just for that one reason. Some people do have thicker upper and lower lips.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So hopefully that answers that question there. Up next, we have a question from Evan Jubron. Says, hi, love your channel. Can you please explain, if you're planning on wearing a stud or a ring in the helix, how does it affect the angle of the helix piercing? So that is actually a very good question.
Absolutely. Okay. So technically, there's like 3 different angles for helix piercings. And I got my good old ears here to kind of show and help how this works. Now, if you're to do a ring, the first angle we can look at is where it's completely sideways like this, where you're going to see the side here and there, and it's sitting flat like a door knocker on the ear. Now, the second option is if you go like at a 45-degree angle, where you're looking on from the front, you're going to see just that small kind of an angle like so. And then the last bit is where it's a true helix piercing, where it's straight through, where the ring is going to lay flat and parallel to the ear like so. So it kind of depends on the look you have. Now, another factor is the shape of your ear, because some people have real flat ridges here, and that kind of limits like the angle it's going to go at. Some people have a real solid ridge. So it depends on the shape of your ear and what you are looking for. If you know what you're looking for, bring in a picture to your piercer to say, hey, I'm going for more of this angle so I can wear a ring when it's done.
And then they're going to pierce with the stud at that angle?
Yes, good point. Yeah, don't start with a ring. Start off with a stud, heal it up, and then change to the ring in the future. The studs are much more short. They don't move back and forth, and they just heal. It probably cuts the healing time almost in half.
So just much more worth it to pierce
absolutely
with the stud and heal it up first.
I won't even start with rings on helixes anymore.
Why double the time for no reason?
It's no good.
Tollefson says, hello, I know you get a lot of questions about piercing bumps, so I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. It's a real problem. We want to help you. But you see, my bumps are on the inside of both my outer labia piercings. Is that a common place to get bumps? Part 2, I wear rings. Would it help to change them to curved barbells? Love you guys both. Greetings from Norway. So
awesome. Hello. And I don't think it's real common. I'd be curious about how old your piercings are. If they're still in the healing process within that first 6 months or so, sometimes movement irritation can cause that. It could be the size of the rings. If the rings are too big or too small and they're kind of sitting funny or something like that, that's another thing. It's like when you sit down, is everything being kind of tucked? And inner labia piercings can be tricky, and finding the appropriate size jewelry is the key.
Outer labia, actually, is what we're talking about.
Outer labia?
Yes.
Okay. A little bit more common for those things to have those bumps. Then I would say, yes, go to the curved barbell. That generally helps quite a bit. Okay. And the outer labia takes a lot longer to heal up than that inner labia, sometimes up to a full year, depending on the thickness of the actual labia.
So
great question.
It is going to cause so bumps aren't unheard of. That is something you're going to wrestle with a little bit.
Correct. Like generally inner labias are much thinner and there's much more room for a large ring to go around. The outer labia, generally you have to have a pretty oversized ring for it to sit in there properly. Generally, I don't suggest the ring until you're fully healed up.
Excellent.
Yep.
Brandon Morningstar says, hello, Scott and Jared. Absolutely love you guys. Just wanted to say,
Love you
Scott,
too.
you've inspired me to pursue a career as a piercer and to finally follow through with all the piercings that I want. So,
Well, congratulations and good luck on that journey. It's a fun and crazy journey. If you're passionate about it, you'll be successful.
and it does seem like if you get into the piercing industry, you then have an opportunity to get all the piercings you ever wanted. It seems
Pretty
like
much.
that's what happens. Like people get a job and then slowly it multiplies.
I've had apprentices in the past come in with like 1 or 2 piercings and like, oh, I really love it. And before the end of the year, it's like you wouldn't even recognize them. It's so engulfing. The whole world of piercing just surrounds you and it becomes you. It's awesome. It's awesome. I do want to say one other thing here too. So sorry we missed last week. We had kind of some things come up, so we couldn't do the live chat. So glad everyone's here this week. We try to do this every other week. And then another thing I wanted to bring up, we hit 100,000 subscribers. Yay! We are so happy. That was so much work, and we have all of you to thank. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We do appreciate it, and we still got more coming.
Keep doing it because you guys are here watching. Up next, we have a question from Ursula's Odds and Sods. I did my first jewelry change in my 8-month-old flat on Saturday, and it took a lot of effort. The back was a bit swollen and bloody, so I put a longer post on and started using the saline again. Could this have happened because my piercer put on a shorter post too soon, even at 6 months, or was the new post too short? My ears have a history of swelling more than usual. And then how long should we leave the shorter post on? I'm worried the flat will swell again if we switch that out too soon.
God, it's kind of a tricky situation. Every person is different as far as the healing times. If you know you go back and forth, yeah, you got to be careful about that. Now, personally, what I would do is kind of going a little experimental here, to be honest with you. But you know those no-pull discs, the silicone discs where you put in between the labret and the jewelry? Maybe try one of those because those are going to be a little bit bigger and more gentle up against the skin, and it's going to act like a downsize. So you put that in there, maybe wear that for a couple weeks to maybe a month, and it seems like everything's comfortable, then you go ahead and downsize. So that might help you out if you want to kind of downsize without actually downsizing it. Could be the jewelry was too short. You're absolutely right. The appropriate size is essential.
Brandon Morningstar, who was just telling us about going to pursue a career in piercing because of you, also wanted to brag a little and say that he got his PA done by the Eric Dakota and was super starstruck. What would you say are some red and green flags when seeking out a piercer to mentor?
I'm jealous. I've met Eric Dakota before, but I've never been pierced by him, and that would have been the hugest of honors. So congratulations on that. And you said red flags for as far as piercers?
Or green flags. Like how does one choose a mentor?
You know, I was just thinking about that the other day. It's like 5 things to watch out for if you're looking for a piercer. This video might be coming, and here's a little sneak peek. Number 1 is they should be changing gloves. Okay, you put on a pair of gloves, yes, it's to protect, but the thing is we're trying to not cross-contaminate. So if you're touching all the outer packages, you're touching all these things, and then you're about to touch a sterile needle, you should have the cleanest gloves on possible. So I would say a minimum of 2, possibly 3 glove changes minimum per body piercing. Number 2, you should be able to ask questions. If they're mean to you and just shut you down like, what, you don't trust me? You don't trust me? At this point, no, I wouldn't. You should be able to ask any questions and feel comfortable. Number 3, you should probably have some options as far as jewelry, and you should talk about the aftercare and possible problems. And that's a huge part. Oh, and the cleanliness of the shop. If you walk in and it's filthy and there's stuff all over, like if they're not cleaning the shop, they're not going to take care of your piercing. So there's a couple things to look out for. I think there's probably one more I could add to that 5, and we'll have a video. So I'm going to save that one for the video.
Right.
But in general, yeah, just glove changes, just in the general cleanliness. They need to be washing their hands.
Now, is that the same thing with like selecting a mentor? Like, do you feel like that someone who is a good teacher is also going to exhibit all of those qualities? Like their shop is going to be clean. They're going to do the glove changes. Like it's the same sort of thing.
It should be the same. Yeah. They should have all these qualities first before they become a teacher, because otherwise you're just teaching bad habits.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and not everyone can be a teacher. Not everyone's the best teacher. Everyone learns different. Some people are visual, some people have to have it written down, some people are hands-on, so finding the right teacher that works with you. I mean, and if it doesn't, you're not connecting, you need to talk about it. Say, hey, I'm not picking things up. I need to be more hands-on. I need more visual. I need, and your mentor, the piercer, should be able to help you out in that way.
Very cool. So there's some give and take. There's some back and forth.
There really is.
So the relationship's important too. It's got to kind of be someone you like, I guess you're saying also.
Correct.
Like you guys have to get along.
Yeah. I mean, if an apprenticeship's a year to 2 years, that's what mine generally is. You're working alongside of me for 2 years. I'm not going to bring on an apprentice or someone I just don't like.
Right.
There's got to be balance. And then if they're working with you in the shop, why are you bringing in negative energy right away? Everyone has to get along and it has to work.
Very cool. So there's quite a lot going into picking a mentor like that. There's some things to consider. Will Jones says, hey, Scott.
Hey, Will.
I just had my septum stretched from a 14 to a 12, and my lobes from a 2 to a 0, and my nostril pierced in one sitting. It was brutal, but I couldn't be happier.
Sometimes we have those brutal moments, but I mean, awesome. All those stretches, everything's going up. And then what was the nostril piercing?
The nostril piercing on top of it.
That one can be kind of smart. It's a sharp pinch, but as long as you're not catching towels on in the future, these heal up pretty quick. And congratulations on your stretches.
Monica Iwa Peterson says, hi, Scott and Jared. Congratulations on 100,000 subs.
We are very proud. Thank you, Monica.
So happy. Kayla says, hi, guys. Or no, actually, I skipped Emily. I'm sorry, Emily Martinez. Hello, Scott. Big fan of the channel and you. I've been waiting to get a navel piercing. What are some tips and advice that you would give to ensure that it heals properly? And what are the pros and cons?
Okay. Navel piercing, number one, low-rise pants. If your pants rub right up against your belly button, it's going to heal rough. It's going to be a long healing process. It doubles the healing process. Back in the 90s when low-rise pants were real popular, people were healing these up in like 3-4 months without any issues. And then as soon as the high-rise pants came on, everyone had red navel piercings for over a year. So number one, get pierced with a curved barbell. Number two, low-rise pants. And number three, don't over-clean it. So many people think you need to keep cleaning it throughout the day, and you're just re-irritating it. Generally once, maybe twice a day with a wound wash, and everything should heal up good for you. And wait to change your jewelry. I know there's a million cute, adorable navel rings out there, but find something you like because you have to wear it till you're all the way healed.
And when you say low-rise pants, you mean basically your clothing should not be touching it. Like, is that what you're saying?
Your pants shouldn't be touching it.
Okay,
your shirts are going to be touching
a
little bit. But if you sit down and your jeans just go right in, like your piercing is pushing up on it, and it hurts, number one. Number two, you're upsetting your piercing, and it's just taking that many steps backwards to heal this properly. I mean, like, imagine trying to heal a scab on your arm if you scratched at it and picked at it every day. Is it ever going to heal, or do you have to leave it be? You have no irritation, leave it alone.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kayla says, hi, guys. Excited to catch you today. What brand or source of emu oil do you recommend, Scott? Where do you get your emus?
Desert Palms Ranch is where I get my emu oil from. I almost got it.
No, you did really good. How carefully you pronounced it. I'm impressed.
But yeah, Desert Palms emu oil. Desert Palms Ranch emu oil is fantastic. I think you can buy it online, or if you're in Vegas, come to my shop and buy it at my shop. I know there's other stuff out there too. Just you're looking for like the pure refined emu oil, and yeah, again, don't over abuse or overuse that stuff.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit does it.
Karen D says, hi from Barbados.
Barbados, welcome.
Very cool. Also, fuff for life, except AJ Styles is here. Glad to see you.
Welcome.
Tolis fan says, another question from me. Any advice on how to open internally threaded jewelry if you have long nails? I can't seem to push them open.
Okay. Internally threaded jewelry, you got to twist it. So sometimes if you can get like a nitrile or a latex glove, and you're not going to get them over the nails, but you can use that to hold on to the bead. So don't even put it on your fingers, just put it on the bead, and you'll get a grip, and you might be able to twist it like that. Don't use pliers, needle nose pliers, anything from the garage toolbox. You're going to scratch and mar your jewelry up. If you can use, sometimes even a paper towel gets you a better grip. But the thing is you're trying to find a way so you're not slipping when you're twisting, and you're already limited with the nails. So wash your hands with a lot of soap just to get all the oils off there. Or like I said, get something like a latex glove or nitrile glove or a paper towel to get a better grip. Otherwise, you might have to go to the piercer. Nails make it tough. It depends on where it is too. Because I mean, if your belly button piercing, like how do you get in there without stabbing yourself? Yeah,
it is tough, and that's not uncommon, right? For some people to go to their local piercer to have things changed out. Is that
absolutely
kind of normal?
It does happen? Yeah, it's funny because like for navel piercing, sometimes I'll look at these people who get their navel pierced. I'm like, yeah, make sure you check your beads, and I'll look down at their hands. I know everyone sees like, what are you looking at? And I'm like, oh, you got nails. This isn't gonna be easy. So it's a factor. You're not alone.
All right. Daniel says, congrats on the 100K. Fun question, I hope.
Thanks, Daniel.
Would you rather go through your most painful piercing again or your most painful tattoo? So it's a different kind of pain, isn't it? Like, how would you say they compare?
Okay. So my most painful piercing is one of two piercings. One would either be an ampelang piercing or it was my nostril. My ampelang piercing was a 10 gauge needle.
For those of us that don't know, where's an ampelang at, Scott?
Good call. Horizontal, straight through the head of the penis. Okay. There you go. Is it painful? Yes. Now the thing is mine was not clamped. Mine was free-handed back in the day, and honestly, I think it took between 7 and 10 seconds to get the piercing needle through. That does not happen anymore. I clamp it. It's 1 second and you're done. So it's much easier this day. But that was 7 to 10 seconds of some of the worst seconds of my life. Now, my other second most painful piercing was my nostril. Relax. If you're getting your nostril pierced, I'm sure you're not getting it pierced at an 8 or a 6 gauge, which is what I did, which is why it was so brutal. They're both fairly fast, but they hurt that bad. Now, as far as that versus tattoo, I think I would rather have my most... No, I'd rather get pierced again than the most painful tattoo because the tattoo isn't over within 1 second. You know, even my nose going down, the dots down my nose, 3 to 10 seconds per dot. And each one was like a huge break in between. And it's like, imagine a cartilage piercing constant. That's what it is. You know, it's not that split second. It's just all the way. And it's like, it's in the bone.
So your final answer is that the tat is worse. The
tats are worse. When it's bad, I would rather have a piercing over a tattoo.
Interesting.
I had to really think that's a great question.
Right. It's a good one.
Yeah. Thank you.
Very cool. So excellent question, Daniel. Hopefully that answer satisfies you deeply
today.
Dancing Lee says, hey, Scott and Jared, I've got a tongue piercing and on the bottom ball, some plaque/tartar white stuff has started to form.
Yep.
I brush my teeth every day. How can I ensure that absolutely no tartar form?
It's really frustrating when this happens. Sometimes it's the jewelry. If you have a little lower quality jewelry in there, sometimes even like the plastic beads, they're more porous and plaque and tartar can build up on there. The easiest way I found to remove this is with a toothpick. A wooden toothpick is not going to scratch or mar up your jewelry. So sometimes you can stick your bar out and kind of hold it and use that toothpick to almost scrape that tartar off, and it's going to kind of fall off. If you've had your piercing long enough, take your bar all the way out, then use that toothpick and you can scrape it all the way off, get it cleaned and put back in. But if you don't get all of that tartar off there, it's like a magnet. It just reattaches right away. So you need to get it all the way off. I find that it's generally with newer piercings that get this a lot. So as time goes on, it's less and less likely to happen. So
what are your thoughts on brushing the actual, like when you're in there brushing your teeth, if you gave the actual thing a brush?
It's just going to happen. I don't think the brush is going to be able to get it off enough.
Okay.
And again, it's like one of those things where it's a newer piercing, most likely. And when you're that agitating around the tongue, you're just going to upset your piercing and cause bumps. So just be patient. It happens to a lot of us.
Totally normal, Dancing Leaf. Alicia says, hey, guys.
Hi, Alicia.
Alyssa Malatrossi says, hey, guys, so happy to see you. What is the proper way to clean a surface piercing?
All right. So this is a really good question because a surface piercing has a long straight bar and like little 90-degree uplifts where a disc or a ball kind of sits on the top. Now, the thing is we always think that we need to clean all that stuff out on the inside. We need to move it. But we're trying to heal kind of like this U-shape fistula, tube of scar tissue. So when we're pushing ends in and out, you're upsetting it massively and it's going to cause it to reject out. So don't worry about cleaning the inside. Nothing's really You don't need to worry about that. But what you do want to use is a wound wash spray similar to this, where it has a nice fine gentle mist. And like if I had my wrist pierced, you spray directly on and try to aim it underneath the discs. That way the crusties that are built up under there should get real soft after maybe a minute or two, maybe 3 minutes. And then take like a piece of gauze or paper towel and roll it into a point, almost like a real hard point, and you should be able to clean under the discs and wipe the crusties out. You need to get the crusties out of there, but you don't need to get all the way inside there. Once a day, and just try to leave it be. These are easily agitated and easily reject out, so keep the crusties so it doesn't irritate that top skin, and then leave it be.
Another congratulations on 100K from Fuff for Life.
Thank you. We are very, very proud.
Emily Martinez just got a nostril piercing with titanium threadless jewelry 2 weeks ago and finally got it after years of wanting it. But I was scared. When is it safe to change it, and how do I change it? So how long are we waiting on this nostril piercing?
Okay, generally about a month to 2 months minimum before you're thinking about changing this. If you want to do a ring or a hoop, I generally tell people 3 to 4 months minimum. If you put the ring in too soon, you're going to get the bump on there. It's going to seem healed after a month, but like I said, you should probably wait closer to the 2 months. To change a jewelry, it's tricky. If you have nails, you're not going to be able to stick your fingers on the inside to hold on to the disc, and because you just got to pull it apart. A lot of people go into their piercers to have it changed. We're working on doing a little video, and we're going to start selling tools sometime soon where they go on the inside and it'll hold, and it can actually separate it for you. So stay tuned for that. We will have a video, and we will show you the right tools you could buy, which will help assist in that. But it's not easy. Straight up, it's not easy. Find something you like. It's not something you're changing every day.
Right on. Just pick something that you can wear for an extended period.
Yep.
An incredibly observant crew we have here. Will Jones says, Scott, I noticed you're not wearing your lobes and that your eyebrow bars look a bit longer on my screen. Tell us about these.
All right. Thank you. So the earlobe thing a couple weeks ago, I had my earlobes stretched to 2.5 inches, then they were removed. And like I have a lot of scar tissue in here. There's not a lot of room. And we had some lobe piercings up top here. And I had them for probably close to a year. I tried everything. I got them stretched all the way up to the 6 gauge. They're kind of comfortable. But every night I slept, I found myself trying to finagle my head, get it around so I wasn't laying on these piercings. And I dealt with it. I started thinking about it in bed one night. I was like, every night I'm dealing with these. Every night. 1 year. After 1 year, if my earlobes aren't happy and healed,
right,
I'm done.
Right. After a year.
So I was like, this is ridiculous. And I just took my plugs out, set them on my nightstand, and I slept so good that night. So I'm sure the holes are still there. They're not irritated. I'll probably put something in the future. But that's what that's about. Are my eyebrow jewelry looking longer?
No, I think that looks normal. It could be
normal?
Just we're in a different room, so it could be like the distance between Scott and the camera is slightly different, so that changes field of view type stuff.
Oh, you know what? I'm starting to get a little bit older, and I trimmed my eyebrows not too long ago, like a couple days ago. I bet that's it.
Is that what it was?
Man, you're observant.
See?
How do my eyebrows
Will Jones is on top of it. Carrie B says, how successful would a rejected navel piercing be to be re-pierced as a floating style? If it was originally pierced about 10 months ago with the traditional jewelry and there is some scarring from it rejecting.
If a piercing comes all the way out and it's just a line of scar tissue, the chance of it rejecting again are increased a lot. I can't give you a percentage, but generally I tell people go to a different angle. It's probably not re-pierceable. But now what you're saying is if it was pierced at this angle and you want to do floating navel where it's going in deeper like that, you're hitting unscarred tissue on the inside. So the chance of that healing up is probably quite a bit greater than if you went in the exact same spot. Now, if your piercing rejected out and you just had a little tag of skin left on the bottom, in the middle, so it didn't come all the way out, you still can heal that up because you have good solid tissue in the front.
Now, it's been 10 months since the original piercing rejected. Do you feel like that's about long enough?
Yeah, generally I say at least a couple months. It kind of depends on how it looks. If you have a lot of red scar tissue in there and it looks really,
irritated,
like it's like kind of a fresh wound, that redness and irritated look is going to stay there if you do the piercing. It's weird because you put a piercing, it puts pressure on there, and that scar tissue is always there. So the better you make your navel look now before you pierce it, the better off you are. You've probably heard me talk about it in the past, but like Mederma, a scar tissue remover, works amazing. Gets rid of the discoloration, softens up tissue. But at this point, 9 months, you're probably pretty well healed up.
Pretty well healed up. So if it's not too red and you're kind of happy with how it looks,
go for it. Yeah.
Awesome. Apollo Bela says, hey guys, is it true that you shouldn't put any creams on a piercing to help it heal? My piercer said I should only sanitize it because a cream would prevent it from releasing the fluids and create a bump. So yeah, do you recommend putting creams and stuff
on? Creams. The only thing I would get close to that would be saying lotion. If your skin was real dry, you get lotion around the area, but I wouldn't put lotion and rotate the jewelry back and forth.
No.
Most medical products are designed for healing wounds closed. For instance, if you get a cut or a scrape, they're trying to minimize the scar and close the wound up. Well, a piercing, you're trying to heal the tube of scar tissue through there and keep the wound open. So it's completely opposite. If you're not sure, read the instructions, and I can almost guarantee you if it's a medical product like that, it's going to say not made for puncture wounds right on the bottle. So I've never seen a cream for a proper body piercing aftercare ever in my piercing in 28, 29 years, however long I've been, a long time.
Been a long time.
Yeah.
So just let your body heal itself. The point of the cleaning process is to get rid of the little crusty, scabby things that are forming.
To prevent problems.
Right.
Exactly.
Not to rub
the most amazing thing to heal our piercings is us. Our bodies are way stronger than any drug out there. It's only our bodies that are healing these piercings. Those chemicals or drugs don't heal them for us. They're just trying to prevent issues and problems. Unless you have a cut or a scrape where it's trying to just get rid of that scar tissue. That's, like I said, another whole story. So less is more. Just use a wound wash, which is sterile saline, spray it on there and wipe crusties off. And that's all you need to do.
So your piercer's right, Apollo. Less is more.
Yep.
Up next, we have a question from Sarah Bruns. That's actually a pretty good one. Okay. We're trying to follow the rules. We had a conch piercing, 10 months now. I want to go swimming.
Sure.
Is it okay to go swimming? Do I have to wait a full year? Or can I go swimming now if it's been 10 months?
Okay. So every body piercer out there has a different set of rules. There's a bunch of different variables here. It could be climate. It could be the materials they're using. I know I'm from Minnesota where there's a lot more humidity. Now I'm in Las Vegas, so it's a lot drier. So things change. It also depends on what and who taught you. But what I'm saying is generally, I say a couple months, a month to 2 months minimum before you go swimming, because that tube of scar tissue you healed should be there. It's just not crazy thick yet. Once it gets thicker, then it doesn't rip and tear. Swimming shouldn't rip and tear that tube of scar tissue. So if it seems like you're mostly healed, you don't have crusties, you're okay to go swimming.
All right.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
And there's no set rules book of you need to wait this much time, this much. I don't know. Some piercers go way over on the safety side. Some say, let's be more practical. You know,
because I know I've read stuff on the internet where people are like, yeah, don't swim for at least a day. You know what I mean? And to them,
insane.
That's okay.
Yeah. What about, we talk about genital piercings? No sex for how long? Let's be realistic here. It's like if you said no sex for 1 year, is anyone going to listen?
Right.
Now, if you said it should be healed up enough in a month to 2 months, and if it hurts, don't do it, that's a more realistic goal.
Right. Something that someone is more likely to actually follow.
Correct. So that's kind of how it, but yeah, safety first. If it's an open wound, it's bleeding and massive crusties, it's not a good idea to go swimming.
But if it seems pretty healed, then you're
probably okay.
Very cool.
Yep.
Question from Karen D from the Barbados. I had a doff piercing, which started to migrate out. There was pain and swelling for the 4 months I had the piercing. Mm-hmm. I took it out. It healed up well. Can I pierce that same ear again? And what can I do to help it heal better next time so that we don't have this same problem?
My question to you is, how good is your piercer? Is this a piercer you always go to? Was it pierced deep enough? Could it go further in the ear? There's a lot of piercers out there who kind of pierce shallow towards the end. For instance, looking for a pen of some sort. Is there any sort of... We're getting a pen here so I can kind of help point here because my fingers are way too big.
Technical difficulty.
Technical difficulties. I see one here. All right. Oh, she got one. Just that one's a better point. I'll use yours. Thanks for all the work. Thanks, Heather. All right. So for a doth piercing, some people, you see how the ridge comes all the way out here? Some people will do a shallow one here. But as you see, the further it goes in, the more of a thick wall we're going to be able to go. So the piercing technically should look like it's coming from inside the ear like there, which looks really, really deep, but honestly, that's where it's supposed to be. So in as far as possible. If you notice your scars out here and they could definitely go in, find a piercer who will bring it further in and it won't reject for you.
All right. Flaw says, hi, Scott. Love your videos, especially your new Piercings Gone Wrong series. Why did you retire your septum and lip piercings?
Good questions. First of all, what do you guys think of all these reaction videos? They're so much fun to do, and we definitely have more coming for you. But yeah, I really love doing those. Now, why did I retire my septum piercing? Because I have nostril plugs in here. Now, the plugs generally have a certain length that they have to be. And when I had my septum, I generally liked wearing a 2 gauge. That's what looked and felt best on me. But all my plugs stuck out. So the jewelry was hitting the jewelry. And one time I even stretched my septum to a 0 and it completely clogged my nose and I couldn't even breathe through my nose. So there's that whole practicality thing. Like I was talking earlier, if earlobes are painful after a year and it's not healing, just take them out so you can sleep. I took my septum out so I could breathe.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Fair.
Lip piercings. Okay, I got a little story for you. So I was working in the shop in Minneapolis, and right next door to us was, I think school. No, it wasn't School for the Deaf or Blind or something like that. Anyways, I had all these deaf girls come in. It had to have been for the deaf, and the one who was truly deaf was a lip reader. Okay, so she was the one trying to read my lips. I had Monroe piercings, lip piercings or snake bites, and also low breaths, along with 2 tongue piercings that were an 8 and a 6 gauge. And this lady was trying to read my lips with all these piercings. And you know, like when someone's head just kind of turns and like, what is he? And I realized she can't understand a word I'm saying, just because I had to re-enunciate so much. I had so many oral piercings. So I think after we were done there the next day or something, I took all my piercings out. I realized how much weight it was because it was all steel.
Wow.
And then I realized I was talking with my mouth real wide open. I was like, I'm going to just keep these out for a while. And then I just got used to not having them back in, and I just never put them back in. I've had probably over 500 piercings at this point. I can't even tell you how many have been redone and I just rearrange, take them out. So it doesn't bother me as much to remove piercings because I know there's more to come in the future.
Very interesting.
But that's why I lost my lip and my nostril, my septum piercing. Good question.
Like practicality for that, because that is interesting, because it does seem like some people try to wear 300 piercings at once. You know what I mean? To them, the goal is to actively wear them all at the same time. And for you, it's more of like when the combination
change your
you feel
look.
like.
Exactly. And I really felt like I was doing them a disservice. Like she's trying to read my lips. I'm trying to be the best piercer. And she just couldn't understand me. And I felt bad. So I took him out, and then I realized it's more comfortable without having like 8, 9, 10 piercings in your mouth. Yeah.
Who'd have thought? You know, it happens slow. You don't really realize. So, very cool. So that's a fun little insight. Good question.
Great questions today. Thank you, everyone.
VS Skagget77 says, hey guys, got a conch piercing 3 weeks ago and I haven't experienced any problems so far.
Sweet.
How long should I wait before I go swimming? So
I would wait probably at least another month and a week or so. Generally, a month and a half, 2 months, and you should be pretty good. But I'm guessing you probably have crusties on there. It's still technically an open wound, so kind of be careful about that. If you're going swimming in the pool, you could keep your head above water. Try not to splash the chlorine and chemicals in there. Lakes, rivers, and oceans are the biggest, scariest no-nos for swimming too early because all the bacteria. I've seen people get staph infections. So make sure your piercing's healed up enough so you don't get a staph infection. If you go into like a pool with all the chlorine, it's just going to get really upset, really dried out, and just prolong the healing process. But lakes, rivers, and oceans, scary.
Can get you actually sick.
Yep.
Helena Williams says, I love you.
I love you too.
I don't know how long to wait between septum stretches. There is so much conflicting advice. So how long do we wait between septum stretches?
Okay. If your septum was pierced properly through the septum, where it really wasn't very painful, it's like that thin mucous membrane area, stretches can happen really easy on your own. So if you have like maybe a 16 gauge in there and you've been healed up for maybe, it's been 2 months, you can grab that 14 gauge, take it out and see if it just goes in. If it doesn't just go right in, put the 16 back in and wait a little bit longer. Sometimes it's that simple. If you do it in the shower, the hot water loosens tissue up, but septum stretch naturally on their own. If it hurts, you're going too fast. But I'm going to say 6 to 8 weeks minimum between each stretch so you don't overdo it. But again, you can probably go up to maybe even up to an 8, sometimes even a 6 on your own if you wait long enough.
Just by taking your time and wait until it feels good.
Otherwise, I would say a minimum of 2 months once you get past a 6. Sometimes they get pretty sensitive if you're trying to stretch and it's not ready to go.
And to reiterate, because it's something that comes up a lot, stretching should not hurt at all.
It's going to be tight, a little tender, but it shouldn't be painful. If you're like, you're not ready. You're ripping and tearing. Okay. And sometimes you get to that point where like just a little more and then like, bam, it just goes real smooth. The rip is done. So be careful. That's why I really encourage people to try to stretch on their own without tapers. Just the chewy should just almost fall right into place.
So on the subject of stretching holes if necessary, Alicia says, "Hi guys, I have a question about my nostril piercings. Mm-hmm. They were both pierced with an 18 gauge needle, but then I've been wearing 20 gauge jewelry in them and they're a couple years old. Mm-hmm. Now we want to change to a ring on one side, but we don't want to put a 20 gauge ring in because it's too thin, could tear the skin. So what's the best way to stretch the hole so that we can fit an 18 or even possibly a 16 gauge hoop in there?" Thank you for your advice.
Yeah, don't go to the 16 right away. Go to the 18 gauge. For those of you who have normal earlobe piercings and you've had them your whole life, you notice all your earrings, there's some thinner ones, some thicker ones, and you can go back and forth without too many problems. Nostrils are kind of the same way between 18 and a 20 gauge. There's a minuscule difference, but there is a difference. The fact that you've had it for years means you could probably just slide the 18 in there. It might be tight for a couple hours or maybe a day and then back to normal. Were they talking about doing a ring?
Yes.
If you're doing a ring, like if you're doing a clicker where it has a little hinge or one of the seam rings where you twist to the side, they have pretty sharp edges on there. So sometimes it's easier to go to the stud first, wear that for maybe a week or two, sometimes even up to a month, and then change to the ring. Otherwise, if you want the rings put in, have a piercer put them in for you. It's generally an easier way to go about it because those little clickers have sharp edges and we have tools to guide it in.
And keep it from cutting. Yep. And otherwise, you're just going to do damage on the way through.
And it shouldn't be painful. It's just you need the tool so it doesn't rip and tear as it catches. Normally a ring sometimes has a round edge. These have straight edges.
Up next, we have a question from Alyssa Sternfield. It's actually a good one. When it comes to anatomy-based piercings like a doth, is it possible to have like a 50-50? It might work or it might not. Or is it pretty much you're a candidate or you're not a candidate? You know what I mean?
No, it's totally the case. It is an anatomy-dependent piercing. I've had people come in before. I don't have a good example here in the ears that I've made, but some people, it's too thick. There's not enough conch room. The doth sometimes is just flat and there's nothing there. If you don't have it, you don't have it. And everyone's ear shape is different. That's what most people don't understand. It's just because I want an industrial. Well, it's anatomy dependent. Traguses are sometimes anatomy dependent. Rooks are anatomy dependent.
So basically, I guess the question is it like there's a ridge or there's not? Or is it possible that a piercer could be like, that's 50-50. We'll try, but it might grow out.
Okay.
Is that something you'd hear?
Kind of. Again, if you have a ridge, and it's a little bit of a ridge where it's like, yeah, I can get it in there, but because it's not a good solid wall, there's a chance of rejecting. I'll say the same thing with belly buttons. If you don't have a good natural lip and it's more flat, the chance of rejection is much, much higher. And that's what they're saying. Some people are like unpierceable. Some people are, I can get it in there. I don't know if it's going to work. And then there's you're the perfect candidate.
Okay. So there is a little bit of a range.
There is.
All right. So hopefully that helps you, Alyssa, kind of guide your way in there. And hopefully you are a candidate for a doth. And, don't try to force it if you're not, because I see people doing that too. Just pick something that does work in your ear, rather than try to some people want an industrial, even though their anatomy doesn't allow it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I
never thought about this before. I'm going to say this right now. If you don't have the anatomy for a doff piercing, there is something called slave rings. Now, stick with me for a second here. A slave ring is like a labret. So you could get a conch piercing, but the bead has dimples on both sides. So theoretically, you could get a conch piercing where the bead would be resting, and if it had dimples, you could turn this sideways and make it look like you have the doff piercing.
That's
so
fun.
kind of like a faux doff piercing, but you're only healing up the conch, if that's the case.
Not bad. We just invented the faux doff.
Yeah.
Very cool. So there's always new options.
There's options, yes.
Agnes Crisera says, hello, I hope you guys are doing well. Today I changed my Helix bar to a horseshoe barbell, and it's been stinging a lot. The piercing's more than a year old. Is it normal to feel discomfort at first?
A little bit, because you had a straight bar in there and then you're putting a curve in there. So there's a little bit of a curve and an angle in there. So it's going to take some adjustment. If you put too small of a ring and there's way too much curve in there, you're going to get bumps. The ring has to be the right size. I know everyone wants it just to be hugging and fitting perfectly, but you need to have 2/3 of the ring showing and only 1/3 on the inside. Hopefully that makes sense.
Up next, we have a question from Unique Classroom. Hi, I'm in Jamaica and I want to do 3 piercings.
Sweet.
Tongue, the normal tongue piercing.
Yes.
My nose and my Navel. Maybe nostril? Navel? Ah, you're right.
Navel.
Good call. How should I do them? All at one time or separately? How far apart? What are your thoughts?
Nostril, what else?
Nostril, a tongue, and a navel.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Nostril, tongue, and navel.
Nose,
They're
tongue,
all
navel.
pretty easy. You can heal those all up at the same time. The only one I'm going to say is tongue. Be careful, because for the next week, you're going to be sounding like a fool. Imagine putting a couple marbles in your mouth and trying to talk like that all week. You get a lisp, and it takes about a week to learn how to re-speak properly. So if you have a big speaking, public speech thing to make, you might want to wait a couple weeks before that actually happens. Otherwise, they're all fairly easy to heal. Jamaica, all I think is beaches, no swimming for like probably a month, 2 months minimum. And yeah, they're all fairly
Shouldn't
easy.
be bad. You should be able to do those at once.
Yeah.
Samantha Padley says, hey, Scott.
Hi.
When can you change a stud to a hoop on a conch piercing? Same with a nose piercing.
Different times. The conch is definitely a lot thicker. Generally, I tell people 6 months to a year for a conch. If it feels good and comfortable and it's been that way for a couple months, you can do it at the 6-month range. For a nostril piercing, if it seems like a perfect healing process and it seems healed after a month or 2, give it 2 more months. Generally, I tell people 3 to 4 months minimum so you don't get that bump on your nose. Nostrils seem healed way before they actually are.
Vinny's here. We're glad you're here.
What's up, Vinny?
Megan Clark wants to know how to minimize the risk of teeth and gum erosion from a smiley piercing. So we've wanted it for 2 years, but no piercer in the area will perform it because they say the danger to the teeth.
Sure.
So is that a pretty common one that some piercers won't do?
It really is, and it's almost borderline where I almost want to stop doing them. But I don't really see as many gum and teeth problems, but people take them out before they get to that point. Now, to minimize that damage, you need to change to a clicker or a seam ring where there's no beads and no extra protrusion sticking out that would rub up against your gums or your teeth. Wearing the right size ring in there so you don't have a ginormous ring where you can play with it. And when I do the piercings, when you pull your lip out, you get that web on the underside. Because that's what we're talking about. It's the web between your gums and your lip. So when you pull it out, I generally do the piercing closer to the lip side than the gum side, so it hangs instead of resting directly up against there. It's going to touch it. It is a possibility. And the thing is if you notice you're getting gum erosion or your teeth, your gums are starting to hurt, you're probably doing damage, and just take it out. It's a high-risk piercing, but people can still wear it without doing damage. And a lot of times it's because you minimize and go to the smaller, flatter ring.
Kayla is having issues with a bump on nose piercing. The question we have today is it possible to get a bump on one side because the angles are wrong? So we have a double nostril piercing. The right side healed like a dream. The left side's been a battle of the bumps. And we noticed that the left side doesn't sit flat.
Yes.
So that's the question, is could that be the reason for the bump?
100%. Sometimes when we do nostril piercings, like like if my nose is angled like this, you need to be perpendicular, which means you're going through the least amount of tissue as possible. Now, if this is the angle of my nostril and someone went this way, like that's a lot more tissue to be healing up. Am I holding that right? Yeah.
No, yeah, you're doing good.
Yeah. So, and because of that, there's this little weak spot right here. Chances are you're going to get that bump right in that little pocket. When it's completely perpendicular, 90 degrees like this, they heal faster and you don't have weak and strong spots. 90 degree angles make that big difference.
So what should Kayla do in this situation? We've been fighting it for a long time. Like, will it get better and eventually match the first one, or should we pull it and then get it repaired?
In my opinion, pull it. If you notice it's a wrong angle, whenever you put a fancy gem, a big gem, they're going to be sitting at different angles. If you want to put rings in there, they're not even going to sit to the right angles. They need to be matched in order to wear those things properly. And you're probably going to be dealing with this bump for a long time. Honestly, if it's pierced properly, you're going to be healed up in about a month. Imagine that. Just take it out, let it heal up, and then once you get it pierced, you can be healed in a month. How long have you been dealing with these problems?
Right.
You know, sometimes you just got to weigh the good with the bad and say it's better to start over.
We have a hello from the Netherlands from Eveline Bonnegert.
Hello, Eveline.
Megan Sherman wants to know if it's normal for a piercer to use an 18 gauge needle to pierce a lobe and then use a 20 gauge piece of jewelry. So that would be putting a smaller piece of jewelry in, right?
Yeah, I don't pierce with 20 gauge jewelry at all. Some people will do it occasionally on like for a nostril, if you have nostril screws. Sometimes you can find that push pins in the 20, but I prefer doing 18. The whole theory behind piercing a larger size and putting smaller jewelry in there is sometimes the jewelry fits inside the needle, and that way you pull the needle out and the jewelry's in and you don't lose your connection. Well, a good piercer isn't going to lose their connection, or they have tools to help guide the jewelry in there. And the second thing is some piercers will do a larger size, one size up on the cartilage, because they feel like it gives it room for that fistula or that tube of scar tissue to heal a little bit better. But I'm personally not a real big believer in this. I think same size works just fine. I'm not sure why they're piercing 18, putting a 20 in.
Kenny wants to know if you recommend travel pillows for healing earlobes. A side sleeper, it sounds like it would be pretty good, right?
Yeah, probably would have worked for me, and I would have saved my ear piercings. No, I've never used one personally, but I have so many clients who swear by them, and their piercings heal up so good. So if you can get in the habit of using the travel pillow so you're not sleeping on your piercings, more power to you.
Fun question from Ursula's Odds and Sods. We want to know, is a Nefertiti done with 2 needles like an industrial since it goes through so much tissue? And also, could a Christina and a VCH be turned into a Nefertiti with a longer bar connecting them?
Every piercing I know of is only done with one needle, unless you're doing an industrial where it's one piercing and then you're doing a separate piercing up above. But if it's connecting, yeah, it has to be one needle. So it's going to be a single needle, no matter how deep it is. And needles do come in different lengths. Like I order through industrial strength needles, and I can order like 1-inch needles, 1.5 inch, 2-inch, 3-inch. I think I've even bought like 6-inch needles in the past. Wow. Unusable, but it sure looked cool.
Right.
I was like, I want to see what a 6-inch, and I'm like, I don't know what I'd ever use that for.
Right.
But yeah, they do come in different lengths, and you'd find that accordingly. What was the second part of the question?
Christina and a VCH being combined into a Nefertiti.
No, not quite, because Nefertiti is generally one deep piercing, and those would be 2 separate ones. So it's almost like creating an industrial. Christina.
Interesting.
I don't know.
A custom industrial,
if
a general
you
industrial.
had the right anatomy, and if you stretched and things didn't move, maybe. That's a really good question. You guys are stumping me. Not stumping me, but I mean,
coming up with the new stuff.
Thinking, yeah.
Nikolai Vinograd says, well, if it isn't my favorite live stream. Scott, I'd love to be pierced by you one day, but I'm too far away. Anyway, what makes a conch piercing so much easier to heal than a helix?
You can sleep on it because you have this huge bulb of thicker scar tissue protecting it from twisting and contorting as long as you got pierced with a stud. I know it seems like a lot thicker and harder cartilage, but honestly, I would rather heal up 3 conch piercings than a single helix. They just are smoother, easier. I love conch piercings. I'll say it. I love conch piercings.
Elena Michael says, hi, Scott. And
Hi.
Since you love conch piercings, let's talk about something you hate.
Okay.
Brandon Morningstar says, hey, I know you think it's a terrible idea, but I want to hear more about why a rectal piercing is a bad idea, as if you did a whole truth on it and it was the Scott's Thoughts segment. So give us Scott's thoughts on a rectal piercing.
Germs, bacteria, infection. Yeah, if you're talking about the actual anus itself, putting a ring in there, like the bacteria, I mean, think like, not to be crude, but if someone farts on your pillow, you get pink eye. That's simple, and it's
right.
And it's like, it's too much bacteria, germs. I don't know what kind of infection you could get from that. No matter how clean you think you are.
Right. It's intrinsically dirty.
I don't know where else to go from there.
Right. So
fecal matter just constantly getting pulled into a piercing.
So overall,
seems like a bad
fan?
idea.
You're not a fan, you'd say then?
0%.
0%.
0%. I can honestly say if someone came into my shop and said, I want to get a rectal piercing and I have $5,000 to have you do it. Morally and ethically, I would still say no.
You're still not doing it.
I mean, did you throw money in front of it? Like, no, I will not do it. That's just, yeah. I don't know what it would take for me to.
Right. Well,
yeah.
We'll have to have a round table discussion.
Every doctor's orders, like 6 doctors all come in and say, we're willing to sign for this person. This person's totally clean. Then I would start thinking about it maybe, but.
I don't think you're going to get a doctor to agree. I think a doctor is going to be on your side of this one.
My point exactly.
All right. Terza says, my new septum piercing won't stay flipped up. Does that mean that it's pierced in the wrong spot?
No, it means your jewelry probably needs to be adjusted. A lot of times we pierce with circular barbells, and if there's too much of a gap here, okay. Now, when you look at someone's nose, I'm going to let you look at my nose here. You can see how thick this is. Now, when I pull my upper lip down, it generally gets much, much thinner. So I generally adjust the circular barbell so when you're relaxing normally, the beads can't push up. It only goes up when you pull your upper lip down. You flip it up and then it gets wider and then it shouldn't fall back down. So if you went to your piercer and say, hey, can we close this up just a little tiny bit? They have a ring closing pliers and they can probably adjust it until it gets to the point where it shouldn't fall down on you like that. I hope that helps.
Elena Michael wants to know if a labret stud can be used in a nostril.
Sure. That's basically what a threadless piece of jewelry is a labret stud. But a lot of the threadless jewelry, the push pin style, has a 2.5 millimeter disc on the inside. Most normal labrets have a 4, sometimes even up to a 5 millimeter disc. Most days it's 4 these days. But it's more comfortable to have a smaller disc in there than a big old piece of metal on the inside. So yes, it can be done. And the second thing is I get hiccups every episode. And the other thing is most labrets start at 16 gauge, not 18. Most.
Danny Pickles says, hi, Scott and Jared. My husband is interested in getting his nose pierced and stretched.
Okay.
What was your experience with these piercings and how long is the healing process?
It's brutal.
Also, Megan Clark said, congratulations on the 100K. Been here since the beginning. I didn't mean to skip
awesome.
you, Megan. You're awesome.
Thank you, Megan. We love having you here.
Anyway, back to Danny's question.
Okay, so nostril piercings, mine were pierced originally one at an 8 and the other one was at a 6 and slowly stretched up. I had a friend that worked in a machine shop that made me multiple sizes between each stretch. Nowadays, you can go through like Gorilla Glass and they make half sizes. It took me almost 10 years to get up to the size. Really, really brutal. When you stretch, it stays sore for weeks at a time. Normally, I tell people that it's not a painful to stretch properly. Nostrils is. Nostrils hurts really bad, and there's a reason why you don't see it. Once you start stretching cartilage, nostrils this big, most of the time they don't close up. A lot of people will actually even start with a biopsy punch where they punch and remove tissue. Most places this is illegal, but those definitely won't close up that well. So as long as you're okay with having a larger permanent hole for the rest of your life, it's a big commitment. Yeah, so that's kind of where I stand. So if you're planning on going bigger, start a little bigger. It does make the journey a little bit easier.
Now, just the other side of the card, what if we were talking about a septum piercing and stretching that?
They just said no's, didn't they?
Well, they did just say no. So I'm just saying, but I mean, all that stuff that you just said, it occurred to me is like not really true of a septum. That
it's
you
100%
could have
true.
a huge septum and no one would ever know.
Yeah, septums are super, super easy. pierce normal 16 gauge, maybe 14. I mean, I've done them all the way up to an 8 gauge before where they're not very painful, depending on the anatomy, and to stretch, one size every month and a half, 2 months. So you could get up to a 2 gauge in maybe 6 months to a year if you did it like that. I mean,
And it's interesting. It's one of the few piercings I can think of where you could wear a piece of jewelry that size and then completely remove it and have no one even aware that you're pierced.
Yeah, I have a 2 gauge septum piercing right now, and no one
would know unless you wore it.
I mean, some of you might remember the story. I've said this before about my old friend Sam. I was eating dinner with him, and he's like, "Hey, you can get those new silicone plugs, can't you?" I'm like, "Yeah, what do you need?" He's like, "Give me a 3/4 inch," and I was just like, he had 2-inch earlobes, and I was like, 3/4 inch for what? He's like, my septum. I'm like, you have your septum pierced? He turned his nose sideways and he had a steel eyelid. I could see right through his septum. I'd known this dude for a year plus, and I had no idea. He had 3/4 of an inch. He stick his pinky just right through his septum. Wow. Didn't even know. Wow. Yeah. So thanks for bringing that up. I thought they were saying nostrils, but
I think they were too, just because that's why, why would they ask you otherwise?
Yeah,
You're obviously the owner of some stretchy nostrils. But yeah, I figured lay out all the different possibilities for Danny Pickle's husband's nose.
Time out one more second here.
Yeah.
If you guys haven't already, we did hit 100,000, but we're still looking for more. Make sure you hit that subscribe and like button. It really helps us out.
Very cool. Thank you, everyone, for doing that. Chris K says, hello, I used to have stretched lobes due to issues. I had them closed surgically. Is it possible to stretch them again?
Yes. I've seen people do this. I don't know.
You paid a lot of money to close them. So I don't know if I'm being a square by bringing that up, but it's
yeah, but I wish I still had mine. Were they uneven? Did you have to do it for a job and now you got a new boss where you're allowed to have it? There's a lot of factors where people would want to go back.
Right.
Now, the thing is scar tissue is going to be mixed inside there. I don't know what your earlobes look like. Find an experienced piercer to pierce them in the proper spots that you're planning on stretching. See what it feels like. It might go faster, it might go slower. I personally don't have much experience with stretching reconstructed earlobes. So
it is something you would have to be careful with because you wouldn't want to do damage.
Scar tissue is weaker than normal tissue. So I don't know if you're going to create weak points, strong points, if they might stretch unevenly. So I wish I had a better answer for you. Right. I do. Let us know if you start doing it.
Right. Let us know what the results are. Absolina Zimmer says, what do you think about salt pastes?
Terrible idea. Okay.
So what are we talking about?
So back in the day when people get a bump on their piercings, we'll just talk about a nostril. And what they would do is they would take, first of all, disclaimer, I do not condone this. I don't think this is a good idea at all. This is absolutely last resort and it causes more problems than it helps. That being said, aspirin paste. If you take pure aspirin, you crush it into a powder, and then you add 1 or 2 drops of distilled water to turn it into a paste. This is going to act like an acid for your skin. And people would put this on the bump itself, let it dry, and then thoroughly rinse it off because this is eating away the bump. It's like put just a normal hydrochloric acid on your piercing and this is eating it away. Compound Q or 0 or something like that.
Oh, like compound W?
W, that's the letter I was looking for.
The wart remover stuff.
Yeah, that's just like an acid eating that stuff away.
It is salicylic acid, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is the same with aspirin.
Basically the same thing. Now, the thing is you're trying to heal a tube of scar tissue, so it's going to eat all that scar tissue and it's going to leave the inner part of your piercing raw as well. So it's really, really difficult to use properly. And if you don't get rid of the source of the problem, the bump's just going to come back. Now, to go all the way back around to your salt paste, I have no idea why people started using salt instead of the aspirin, but I think over the time of the internet, things just got twisted around because we used to use saltwater soaks where you'd mix in and you're trying to make a saline where it has to be 1/4 of a teaspoon of non-iodized fine grained sea salt per 8 ounces of distilled water. And then you got to soak. But I think people just mix those two up and it doesn't really do much. Now, if you do too strong of a salt mixture when you're mixing up your salt and you're soaking it, it turns your salt water into a hypotonic, which can cause skin cells to kind of implode, not implode. I'm thinking about... Anyways, it causes way more issues.
Creates osmotic pressure and messes with the water content of the cells.
So salt paste, don't do it. It's just a bad idea. And find the source of the problem. Is it pierced at the wrong angle? Are you catching it on things? Is it being bumped and hit on a towel every day? These are the source of the problem. Get rid of the source and the bump should go away.
Excellent.
That was
advice.
a long answer.
I mean, it was an interesting subject that you haven't had a chance to talk about.
Yeah. So
Cody S. is a new piercer. Says, hi, Scott.
hi.
Was wondering what your thoughts are on tandem piercings. So tell us what a tandem piercing is.
We really don't talk about that much here. Tandem piercing means getting pierced by two piercers at the same time. This is really, really common for nipple piercings because no one wants to sit through the two piercings. Some of us do. Some of us are,
Right.
love the piercing. But anyways, if you're really freaked out about it, some shops will have two piercers where, okay, so you'll bring the person in the room. One person's going to clean and mark you. Get everything all set up. They set the tray up. Then they call the other piercer back in the room. The other piercer will come in the room, wash their hands, glove up, grab the tools. And then it's just like one deep breath in, you blow it out, both nipples pierced at the same time. This can be done with conches, helix piercings.
Anything like paired?
Maybe not anything because nostrils, things get in the way. You can't fit all those hands in the nostril.
Okay.
Lip piercings too. You can't fit them all inside there. So there's only lobes, helix, ear stuff, maybe eyebrows, nipples.
Now, does anyone ever do like unmatched pairs? Like
Yeah.
one person doing your
Navel,
helix or
navel
somebody
and
else has a
eyebrow
navel
or something.
Okay.
Yeah, you can totally do that too, as long as there's the room and that kind of separation there. Not every shop offers this. You got to find a shop that's busy and has two piercers and they're working the same shift, and then you got to schedule it.
Right.
So it's pretty rad. A lot of people, when they do suspensions or energy poles where people are hanging from hooks, those are almost always done tandem. Because you put in multiple hooks. Like if you're getting 6 hooks in your back, you don't want to sit through 6 and then hang. It's 3 separate piercings, and then you got all 6 in at the same
Those
time.
two people are
Yeah,
working.
Yeah.
Very interesting stuff.
Great question. Tandem piercings. TANDUM. DEM?
Like a tandem bike.
Yeah.
And it does, like you'd say with something like a nipple, it does reduce the amount of overall like pain that it's happening together.
Well, I mean, a majority of the piercing issues is what's going on in your head. It's like getting ready for every piercing. Okay, I'm ready. Deep breath in, or the countdown, or whatever it might be. If you only have to do it once, that's easier than twice.
Absolutely.
But if you're getting done twice, it's generally a little bigger rush because you're going through multiple at the same time.
Angela Stevens agrees with you and prefers the pain of tattoos over piercings, and is actually hoping to get a re-pierced tongue and nostril soon. So
right on.
awesome.
Cool. Yeah, well, what does everyone else think? Would you rather have a more painful piercing or a more painful tattoo? Let us know in the comments.
Daniel says hello.
Hi.
Deanna says, hi, Scott. I want to get my 3rd septum piercing to continue my stacking journey, but my piercer said it won't sit right. It would either go between the other 2 I have or behind. What do you think? Now, with stacking, are they multiple holes? Or
No. Generally, when you're talking stacking, it's one piercing hole with multiple pieces of jewelry in there. You can also do a double septum piercing if you have that. That's cool, where you have one in front of the other. But as far as the stacking goes, you keep putting jewelry in there and the hole is going to adjust. Okay. So a lot of times when you do stacking, it goes a long way. So you get more of an oval type shape. If you're doing a normal circular barbell or captive bead ring, it goes in a nice symmetrical round circle. You can kind of go back and forth, but if you mainly wear like one large gauge and you just put in a bunch of stacked jewelry, it's going to sit funny. It takes a while for the jewelry to all adjust and sit in the proper spot. So it may sit funny at first, but give it some time.
And it'll just hang and get straight.
It sits to where it makes itself comfortable. That's why piercings migrate. If something's really uncomfortable in the position and it's a little better here, sometimes the body just adjusts.
Right.
Yeah.
Just sit there. Very good. And so if we are piercing multiple holes and what we're aiming for eventually is a stack of many rings like you were showing, so that's not an additional piercing. That would be sticking another ring through one of the existing
It's not
holes.
multiple piercings. No. You're not going to get the same results if you're trying to do multiple piercings to get that stacked look. Just use one hole and to start stretching and it'll kind of adjust itself.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool. Infinite Juju one day at a time says on the
I love all
live,
your names.
have a question. How do you heal an infected septum piercing?
If it's truly infected, you'd probably want to go to the doctor and get some antibiotics. We're having a tough time with words today. If it's infected, I would say if you're able to do, generally I'm not a big fan of the saltwater soaks anymore, but non-iodized sea salt, 8 ounces of water. Make sure that salt water is mixed exactly perfect, 1/4 of a teaspoon per 8 ounces of water. And if you can soak it in there that warm, it might help kind of draw some of that infection out of there. If you have full-on pus coming out of there, just go to the doctor and get antibiotics. Sometimes they're not fully infected and they're just really irritated or upset.
Yeah, what if we just have a bump and we're just using the word infection?
That could be it too. If the jewelry's spinning and you're constantly pulling crusties through, yeah, that's going to be irritation and you get a little bit of pus out of there. If you have a circular barbell and you're able to flip it up, that's generally what I suggest because it's going to minimize the movement. Another possibility would be get a staple or a retainer, septum retainer, where it just goes in and you can flip that up and it stays stationary. That could help quite a bit. But yeah, if it's infected, go seek medical help.
Cody S., we were speaking to earlier, recent new piercer, recently was piercing a bridge with a 16 gauge straight barbell. Mm-hmm. It looked like it was starting to reject, so we took it out. What do you recommend for future bridge piercings?
I do a minimum of a 14 gauge on bridges. And in my experience, I'm really leaning towards going 12 gauge. You have to have the right anatomy. When someone comes in for a bridge piercing, you have to touch down like this. If there's no fatty tissue and it's just like bone, like ting, 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 it's going to reject out. You're going to get bone erosion. It's going to be really, really dangerous. You need to have a lot of extra tissue and put it in the right spot where it sits naturally and it's not being distorted by that bone. And again, larger sizes help a ton.
Daniel says, I always think piercings are worse for me, but then I go through a 5-hour solid black hand tattoo session and suddenly my view changes.
Yeah. Yeah, those are brutal. The inner thigh, that was one of my favorite ones too.
Angela Stevens, yeah, that does sound like fun.
It's not.
Angela Stevens says, I think I want to be a piercer, but I'm 35. Is that too old to get started?
Shame on you for saying it's too old. I'm going to say never. I always thought that this was a young person's game. But as time goes on, experience and wisdom has so much. Generally, I find that older piercers are going to have things that heal a little better in general because they're not as risky.
Right.
Okay. When I was younger, I was doing a lot of crazy industrials, surface bars. Let's see if this could heal. And as I get older, I get a little bit more conservative, I guess. And I want to make sure that everything heals properly. There's no age group. There really, really isn't. If you get old and you're shaky, you can't pierce because you're shaky, not because you're old.
Right.
You can't see, you might need to get some bifocals. That happened to me, but it's not slowing me down at all. Right. I'm 47. Yeah, 47. And I plan on doing this for a long time to come. Fakir Mushafar was piercing towards the end of the days. When I got pierced by him, he did my apodravia, which is vertical through the head of the penis in a ritual style. I don't even know how old he was, and it's one of my favorite experiences. Granted, he's the godfather of piercing, but people trust and look up to your elders too. So if it's something you want to do, go for it. We live once. There's no reason to look back and like, oh, I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have done that. Do it.
Just do it.
Just do it.
All right. So hopefully that inspires you a little bit, Angela. Yum says, congratulations on the 100K. Been here since 13K. We love you, Yum.
That is awesome.
Very
Thanks for
cool.
being along with the ride. And thanks to everyone. 100,000 subscribers. That's insane. That's a lot of people. I never thought I was going to get to this point. My whole purpose for this channel was just to get out proper information and try to help and give back to the community. And that's what we're doing. And I love the community that we have here. You guys are the best.
Now, a lot of people are worried about, like, they want tongue and mouth piercings, but they're concerned about the tooth and gum erosion, obviously. Yes. Thea wants to know, is there any way to minimize the gum and teeth damage from a tongue piercing? Like weird stuff, like maybe piercing it at an angle or putting discs on both sides? Like, is there any tricks like that?
Downsizing to the appropriate or correct size jewelry is a huge factor. Some people think that, like here, everyone's like 5/8 is the standard length for a downsized tongue. I've put in like 7/16 of an inch, way shorter. I've had to keep people at almost, 11/16. There's so many different sizes, and finding the right size works best. Just because Target or Walmart or Spencer's sells this one size bar isn't necessarily the right size for you. It's like pants. Put on the right size. When they fit right, they're awesome. And then the other thing is if you're taking your jewelry in and out all the time, the better the chance of that bead coming unthreaded in the future. Put it in, lock it in, and leave it be, and just check your beads once in a while. The biggest risk for any tongue piercing is that the bead comes unthreaded, comes off when you're eating, and you bite and chip and damage your teeth. So check your beads, but it's always a possibility.
So I think people don't even think about that it's not about biting it in its normal configuration.
Yeah.
It's about it coming unscrewed and you biting it then.
I would say most of the stories where people have chipped or damaged their teeth is when the bead came unthreaded in their food, and you're just like, oh, it's just spaghetti. Crunch. Damage is done, and it's a terrible feeling, and that's the main risk. If you're taking it in and out all the time, those threads loosen up and they're more likely to come undone. So put a piece of jewelry in there, crank it tight, and leave it be.
Now, sort of related from Absolina Zimmer, is it possible to have a lip piercing without ever causing any kind of oral damage? Like if you are careful enough?
Yeah, absolutely. Lip piercings are generally a little bit easier to deal with because if you downsize to the proper size, the disc a lot of times gets sucked into your lip a little tiny bit, kind of creates a pocket. And for lip piercings, if the bead comes undone, generally when the bead falls off, and then the jewelry has to be pulled all the way back in, and you're more likely to see it. Now, if you leave the long bar in there, then you're more likely to get gum erosion and teeth enamel erosion. So you just got to be careful about that. So get pierced the proper angle, downsize the proper size, and you should be fine. If you're seriously worried about it, go with a Gestrum or vertical labret, angel things, stuff that is vertical on the outside of your mouth so nothing goes inside.
Makes it easy to not accidentally do that. JJM would love to get either a tragus or a doth piercing, but uses AirPods a lot because of work travel. Is it okay to do a tragus with a stud and a flat back? And do you think we're still going to be able to wear earpods?
I would suggest you do a stud with a flat back right away. But no, the earpods, earbuds, things like that just cause problems. I know everyone has I got squishy ones, I got smaller ones, I got this, it fits in there. But honestly, it's like if it's just distorting the bar a little bit, it's going to cause the bump to grow. You're going to need to abstain from those earphones, earpods, things like that until it's healed up, probably like 3 to 6 months. Maybe you have to switch over to earphones like what Jared's wearing, where it goes completely over the ear and cups. Yeah. So that way you don't have to worry about it. So you might just have to adjust until it's healed. Once you're healed, you can wear earpods and I'm mixing all these words.
Some people can't. I've also heard of people who have a fully healed tragus, and then when they stick the earbud in, it creates soreness. I've heard a couple people complain.
It's possible. I'm guessing they probably need a shorter bar or smaller earbuds that go inside.
Okay, so the right combination of things could be comfy.
That along with the fully healed piercing.
Very cool. But it is a tough one if you love love the AirPods. Will Jones says stretching piercings is a bit strange. My piercer did my lobes. The taper fell straight through, but the plug hurt to put in and still stings. It's a 0 gauge Gorilla Glass. Why does it hurt, Scott?
Sometimes when we do the stretch, you're just elongating and then you're kind of stretching things out, and it may not hurt initially, but your body's trying to naturally go back to that point. So it might be a little tender for a couple days afterwards, but Gorilla Glass, in my opinion, what size did they say?
0.
Sometimes 0, double zeros are questionable sizes through some of the companies we order through as far as the tapers, the metal pins that stretch up to that size. I always double check my tapers because some of them seem like slightly smaller, slightly bigger. There's been companies where I ordered where oh, it's made to go inside the plug or sit outside. And it's like,
but then it's the wrong size.
So the tools are the wrong size. And I hate saying that. So it might be one of those ones where it's just barely under and the taper slid right in. And then we got the jewelry and the jewelry did the stretch. That's why it's sore. So that's a possibility.
Now, if we've put a stretch in and we notice over the next couple of days it's stinging, Do we take it back out? Do we just let it
Leave
sit?
it be. Leave it be. If you're having problems where you're getting pus and it's bleeding or something like that, then you want to downsize and kind of go back down to normal. Another thing to think about is you stretch your ears. Your ears are tight. And then if you're sleeping on it, it's twisting and trying to stretch naturally on its own too while you're sleeping on it. So that could be why it's sore, because of the way you're sleeping on it. If the jewelry's too tight and the O-ring's pressed too tight up against there, that could be it. But if it's real sore, maybe take some ibuprofen, Aleve or Advil. Those are anti-inflammatories. Take the swelling down. That might make it feel better. If they're extra sore, you can soak your ears in some cold water. That might reduce some of the swelling and kind of take the edge off of it. A couple ideas for you.
Very cool. Up next, we have a question from Kenny Vlogs. Wants to become a body piercer and doesn't know where to start. So a quick overview on that. And also, is 6 months long enough to change jewelry if you've been healing for 6 months?
Depends on the piercing. Some cartilage piercings take over a year. Some genital piercings be around that time. Depends on what you want to change it to. I wish I could say yes or no, but if your piercing seems fully healed, no crusties, you're probably okay. Just make sure you put in the appropriate size jewelry. And you said you want to become
a body piercer.
Okay.
What would be the steps there?
You need to find an apprenticeship. So you need to find a qualified piercer who's been doing this a while who can teach you the ropes. Here in Las Vegas, we say a minimum of 6 months. That's the law. I personally think it's closer to a year, sometimes even up to 2 years for a full proper apprenticeship. During the apprenticeship, it's kind of tough to survive. You're watching, you're taking notes, you're cleaning tools, you're doing some of the dirty work, kind of paying your dues as you get through the apprenticeship. Don't give someone just a bunch of money and say like, oh, the minimum time is 6 months and you'll be a piercer, because you're probably not going to know everything you need to know. To be a successful piercer, you need to have all the knowledge. You need to know to do all the piercings, and that just takes time. It takes time. So if you have a piercer you really respect, you trust them a lot, start with them. Just ask them what they require for an apprenticeship. Have they ever done one before? It's kind of a tough subject. It's tough to get in. Once you're in, it's awesome, but getting your foot in the door is really tricky. Don't overstay your welcome. You'll hear people say, oh, he's got to hang out at tattoo shops all the time. And it's like, we're not going to want you there because we're trying to run a business too. Right. So
it all depends on the shop too, because I'm sure some shops are more of like a bunch of dudes hanging out kind of vibe. You know what I mean? So maybe they wouldn't mind if you were cool.
kind of got to weigh it out. Like here where we're doing 20 to 30 piercings a day, I don't have time to sit there and talk. If you're just sitting on the couch all day, you're not really learning anything. Right. So you kind of got to weigh out how things are with your piercer, develop some sort of rapport with them so they know who you are, and start getting pierced by them. That's the best way to go about it.
Start that way.
Yeah. Good luck to you.
Very cool. Cody S., new piercer, has a few questions. What do you usually pierce nostrils with? And what are your thoughts on bending your own needles for things like dots?
100%. Bending needles is very, very important. It allows me to do most of the piercings much faster and more accurately. That's something I've never really talked too much about as far as bending needles go. If you're bending needles, you're going to need to buy some and practice. There's different types of bends I do. For instance, if the needle's here, sometimes I'll bend the needle at the end where the sharp part comes all the way up. Sometimes I'll do the bend where the sharp is here and then mostly long. Sometimes I'll do a nice U shape. But the most important thing is don't stab yourself while you're bending it. Don't use tools. You do it all by hand, nice and gradual. And if you have a kink in that needle, throw it away. It's garbage. That's why you need to practice.
Because you have to be able to get the curve without a kink.
Correct.
Okay.
And wasn't there something about how do I...
what do you pierce nostrils with?
I pierce nostrils generally with a threadless 18-gauge labret. It depends on the top they want. We have thousands of options here. The post has many different lengths. So when I do the piercing, I'll sterilize like 3 to 4 different lengths, because you don't know where the person wants the piercing, the angle they want it at, or not the angle, but forward or back, further back or thicker. So just make sure you have the right size jewelry, and then the threadless works the best. I used to use nostril screws, but they generally fall out. They cause more bumps and irritation. No one ever comes back to have them readjusted. So I just switched over to the threadless, and we're seeing not near the problems we used to.
Just more success.
Yeah.
Wyatt Holt has an interesting question. It's actually pretty common. My girlfriend's lobes keep stretching and healing so that they've formed a line. Is there a way that you can remove that and then pierce it again?
Are they talking about a blowout?
Yeah, well, I think more like how you see people who wear sometimes dangle earrings, how it'll almost like cheese cutter a long slit.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of, just a single hole. It's almost like over the course of years, it's worked its way down.
Okay. What is the question? Like, how do
is there anything that can be done about that? Is there any way to remove this line stretch and re-pierce?
If it's been stretched and you have that slit in the ear, it's not going to get any smaller, but you can prevent it from going further by not wearing the thin earrings with some weight on the end. We saw a ton of this in the 70s and 80s where everyone wore the huge, dangly, heavy earrings with a real thin wire, and then like everyone just had these slits in their ears. So find something thicker, a thicker post. If the plug is already there, there's this company called Omerica, Omerica, and they sell wood plugs that have like this cork type material. So figure out what size plug she's at. She can wear the plugs, and then that cork thing, you can wear the normal dangly stuff in there, but you have a larger surface, so it's not going to create that slit anymore.
Okay.
It might be a different look. Now, the only other option is to go to a doctor and have the ears basically opened up, sewn shut, and starting over. But it's from wearing too thin and heavy earrings.
And just slowly cuts its way through.
Excuse me.
Up next, we have a question from Matthew Glebus. Matthew had a helix pierced at the mall in the 90s, and a 4mm ball shot right through the ear. Now I have to keep a 2-gauge plug in there just so that it looks normal. Is that a pretty common thing? Just like,
wow. Some people just have naturally more stretchy ears. I'm sure when they did the piercing, that 4-gauge bead didn't get pulled right through. It was just a matter of time. A lot of times with those butterfly back earrings, we keep putting it tighter and tighter because, well, we don't want to see the jewelry kind of hanging over the front. But the thing is the tighter you go, the disc is getting pulled into the back, the bead's getting, and it seems looser and it starts dangling. So you go tighter and tighter until you connect it all the way through.
Oh, and it just goes through.
And then it's like, yeah, so now you have that big hole. Nothing you can really do. Go to a doctor, have it sewn up. Otherwise, find some plugs. Join the plug club.
Join the plug club. Ellie Garrity wants to know, is it normal to not have crusties all the time when healing, or not for the first few weeks? Some people get worried, like things are going too well. Is that a problem?
No, it's not a problem. The only time it's ever a problem is if you don't have crusties. We'll talk about an eyebrow piercing here. So if you got an eyebrow like, oh, my eyebrow never gets crusties, but that whole area is puffed up and you can see stuff underneath, stuff's building up and nothing is being released. This is called an abscess, and they're pretty darn rare for piercings. I've seen them before, and if you have an abscess, everyone says, oh, you just need to lance it and pop it. Don't. That's a doctor's work. I don't even do that as a piercer. I have access to all these needles. Like I can lance it. No, you go to the doctor and let them deal with it, because that's almost like an infection on the inside. It's going to be heat. It's going to be sore. You're not going to be able to touch it, and it's going to seem like it's over swelling and super puffy. That's an abscess. That's bad. You would know if you had it. A lot of people get like tragus piercings, lip piercings, and they're like, I just never get crusties. They probably do. It's just not sticking to the jewelry. It's falling off. You're cleaning it properly. Sometimes it comes off in the shower, but nothing to worry about as long as it's not puffing up and you can see a pocket of stuff on the inside.
And yeah, I bet you would know if that was the case.
You would know. Yeah.
Very cool. Jack says, hey, Scott, I've had snakebite piercings for about 4 months, and one of them has a bump that can't seem to go away. Any advice?
Depends if the bump's on the inside or the outside. If it's on the inside, sometimes having the proper size jewelry, maybe a little shorter or a little bit longer, because... well, if it's pierced at an angle and the disc is pressing into the lip, that's probably where the bump is on the inside. If it's on the outside, you might be playing with it. Sometimes we do this in our sleep. Sometimes towels, things like that get caught on there. So just kind of be patient with it. Emu oil, if it's on the outside of your lip, can kind of help calm down upset piercings. Make sure the jewelry's screwed all the way in or it's pushed all the way in, because a little gap can cause problems. Like you get caught moving back and forth. Just make sure it's quality jewelry too. Yeah, there's a scratch, ding, a nick on the jewelry. That can cause it to get really upset and cause that bump too. I hope that helps. But try not to play with it. That's probably what it is.
On the subject of the pain of tattoos and piercings,
Yes.
Paula has 30 piercings and many tattoos, has a very high pain threshold / tolerance, and very few of them actually hurt. I'm not the least bit nervous to get either anymore. Keep up the good job. So that's an example of someone who kind of, doesn't really care, is down with both.
Yeah. I wish I was there with you. I've been pierced over 500 times, and I still get butterflies, even though sometimes I know it's not going to hurt. There's no dangers involved. I still get scared. And none of them hurt you. You're a machine. I mean, things might hurt a little bit, but I'll still get them done. But wow.
I mean,
some people, it's mind over matter.
Really
It's like if you can that's why I say surrender to the experience. If you can fully relax, trust your piercer, and just allow things to happen, it goes smoother, and you've reached that state of nirvana. Wow.
Sophia says, hi, no question today. Just love the channel.
Well, thanks for being here. We love having you here.
I've been trapped under this cup for 7 days. Says, hi, fellas. Hope you're doing well today. Is your shop trans friendly? For example, if a trans man came to your shop and asked you for a VCH piercing, would he get funny looks or a rude comment?
No, not at all. I pierce trans people all the time. It doesn't matter to me. People are people. Straight up, people are people. And, some people are jerks. I don't care.
Right. You're not.
If you're happy, that's what I care about.
Right.
I don't care. Yeah, people come in with like all glitter and sequins and like all these weird things, and it's like, I don't care what you're wearing. You're not judging me by the way I dress. I'm not judging you by the way you dress, the way you look. Doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter.
So everyone is treated wonderfully here. Elena Michael says, can you get 2 tongue piercings at the same time, or is it better to get them done separately?
I have done them twice in the same time. I personally think it's sometimes a little easier because when you do one piercing and you have the right next to it, the one swelling puts pressure on the other and it causes a lot more swelling. At the same time, I do venom piercings. Yeah, you can do both at the same time. It's just going to be a rougher healing process.
An interesting question from Victorio Cododo. Hello from Italy.
Hi.
I have a venom piercing from 3 years ago, and I'm thinking about getting a tongue split. So right now, if we speak too quickly, the right half of the tongue doesn't seem to move properly and keep up. Do you think that that's going to be a problem after the tongue split?
No, I don't. All my friends who have had tongue splittings, tongue forkings, it's funny because it takes a while to learn to use your tongue. Some people can twist their tongue left and right. They can curl it, do it. Some people can't, but it's like it's 2 main muscles, and it's just once it's free, it'll eventually learn. Like for someone to learn to be able to put their tongue around and pick up a straw, it takes months. But I know a lot of people get there, so it just takes time. I'm going to ask Kelsey, my other piercer here, and we'll try to remember to get back 2 weeks from now, like how long it took her and what the deal is. But yeah, you should be totally fine.
Will Jones wants to know, if you're going swimming and you have a lot of crusties, can you let the crusties build up for a few days, and then is it going to seal that piercing hole up?
Good question, but no, you're probably not ready for the piercings. If you get a lot of crusties on there, I would maybe suggest getting a Tegaderm patch, which is a waterproof Band-Aid. It only works, it doesn't work on like ear piercings. If that's the case, keep your head above water, but like a nipple or a navel piercing or something like that. It's a clear piece of like saran wrap. That's a waterproof Band-Aid. It allows it to breathe, but won't stick to your piercing. So that's going to be your best bet if you want to go swimming and you have that many crusties. And don't let them build up that much. Get those things off there.
All right, we are running out of time, so we are going to hit a few more questions here and comments. Will Smith says, keep my wife's name out of your mouth. And that's a threat that he might slap you. So if I was you, I would do so.
Deal.
What did I say? What did I do? Up next, we have a question from Sandra Cohn von Loon. Hi, Sandra here from the Netherlands. Love your videos. What's the best way to treat new piercings? I get different advice every time. People say salt or soap or twisting or not twisting. What's the definitive word here?
The definitive word is less is more. And that means less touching. So no touching, spinning, or rotating. The only exception for touching your piercing is with clean hands. If you have to check the threaded bead, you can tighten it once a day. with clean hands and right after you've cleaned it. Now, as far as the cleaning goes, this is what I would suggest. Not necessarily this brand, even though I love NeilMed. It's a sterile saline solution, and when you press the top, it comes out in a nice, fine, gentle mist. You're going to spray both sides of your piercing. Wait till those crusties get nice and soft, probably 2 or 3 minutes or so. Then you go in there with a piece of gauze or paper towel to wipe off crusties. We generally suggest staying away from Q-tips, cotton swabs, so the cotton fibers aren't sticking and getting stuck in there, turn into a bacteria trap. And if it's an oral piercing, an alcohol-free mouthwash. I love Biotene. Biotene is an alcohol-free mouthwash. There's many versions of it. This is just the one I really, really like. And yeah, try to keep swelling down. If it's a piercing that's swelling a lot, ibuprofen, Aleve, Advil. And like I said, less is more. Clean pillowcases, don't touch or play with it. And if you're having problems, talk to your piercer.
And for our last question for the day, and I apologize to everyone whose question we didn't get to. You asked so many good questions. We really appreciate it. We'll have to try to get you next time.
Really wordy today, too. I
mean,
a lot,
we like to listen to you talk.
We needed to have this.
It's really why we're here.
Okay.
So our last question will be from Henrik Scaldini, who says, "Hey guys, a couple of weeks ago I fell on my face and I had to get stitches right below my lower lip, and now there's quite a bit of a scar tissue there. Can I still get a labret piercing?"
Most likely. I'm guessing it probably didn't split all the way through. And even if it did, wait till the scar tissue heals up. It's probably going to be like 6 months to a year minimum. Use some of that Mederma, some sort of a scar tissue remover, and try to minimize it as much as possible. Now, when we say piercings, like a navel piercing, if like there's a natural ridge, if it rejected all the way out, and with a curved barbell, the bar is going to want to naturally go that way. But being that a labret piercing is going straight through, it's not going to reject up and through the top of the lip. So yes, you can get it pierced, but minimize that scarring first. Give it some time, and you're totally fine for that. Now, you guys are all so awesome. Again, we hit 100,000 subscribers, all because of you guys. The questions we had today are epic and amazing. I love you all. So thanks for being a part of this. Make sure you hit the like, hit that subscribe, and of course, keep putting holes in your body. We'll see you on the next video.